Transition Awareness Breathing. Feeling grounded for both children and parents is essential for healthy living and learning. Join Eartha Powell on this series for tips and tools for creating a harmonious environment for learning. Transition Awareness Breathing will help you and your child find an individualized path to tackle change, promote lifelong learning, and discover new approaches to calmness.
Hi, this is Eartha. Welcome to Transition Awareness Breathing Podcast. I'm so glad you're back. I wanted to ask you a question. Have you heard of the studies that's being shared about the effects of mindfulness on the brain and how the practice of mindfulness is really helping people as far as strengthening compassion and helping different nerve cells in the brains to grow? So I want to encourage you to keep your eyes open for some of those studies because it's really, really interesting. But before I continue, I wanted to let you know today we're going to talk about perception. Before I get started, of course, I want to thank Web Talk Radio for allowing me to have a platform here to bring Transition Awareness Breathing Podcast to you. And I'd like to thank my producers, Mary Lou and Sam, for making Transition Awareness Breathing Podcast available to you wherever you are at. Well, this is an exercise that is really going to be challenging for me because I'm used to doing this activity with my students in a face-to-face setting. But let's give it a try. So when we're talking about perception, it's a part of mindfulness and awareness. Many times we all have different perceptions and we all have our, whether it's good or bad, we all can be judgmental of things. I think that's part of human nature. In some degree, I think it's part of our survival mode. But I think with mindfulness, it really takes you beyond a survival mode and helps you grow. Some of the exercises, what I do at my class, and you may have seen this, is a picture of a vase. It's a simple vase. And it's a black and white color. When you look at the vase, first you see a vase. But then if you keep looking at the vase, there is a picture of people around the vase. When I show it to my students, many of them, they don't get it. Because if you're looking at something that is a illustration of an illusion, what you see is based a lot on what your experience is. So often, many times what I do is if a person can't see the other illustration, I'll talk them through that and then they can see it. And isn't that interesting how when we're dealing with other people, sometimes we have different perceptions of people, groups of people, or whatever, and we have to sometimes have a guide to open our minds to see different perceptions. And why is that so important? I mean, isn't it much easier to stay in our own little comfortable corner and just see the vase? Well, just think of the different gifts that is being, you have many gifts. And when your perception opens, it broadens your scope and your ability to use your gifts. If it's your gift of, let's say your gift is writing or art, and if you see just one perspective, well, the communication of your your gift, whether it's art or writing, is just going to be based on that narrow perception. Whereas if you are open and you see a broader perspective, look how much your world has opened. You have more to write about. You have more to capture in art, whatever your media is, whether it's paint or clay. Or, if you choose to stay with the old media, your own perception, well, that's a total choice. But at least you are aware. And it's that awareness is so important, and that's so hard, I think, for some people to capture, that there is a different perspective. Another picture that I sometimes use is, I don't know if you've seen this one, but I really like it. If it's a sheet, and it has black and white arrows, and what I tell my students to do is to count the white arrows, and then I ask them to count the black arrows. And you look at the picture, you don't even see the black arrows at first until I ask them to count the black arrows. Or sometimes I'll say it just in reverse, count the black arrows. And they'll start counting, and then I ask them to count the white arrows, and they don't even see it. So this is, again, it's an awareness to see something that you really didn't recognize was there. And that part of opening and looking and seeing different parts of things, whether it's your environment or your relationship or something, it opens your mind, and it makes you realize, oh my goodness, I didn't even see the black arrows or the white arrows. This is so helpful, because many times when we are kind of in our own little perception, our own little world, and we are going along our road of life, and sometimes we tend to make mistakes, but sometimes we can't see our mistakes, and somebody brings up our mistakes to us. Sometimes it makes us a little bit edgy for many different reasons, and I'll just bring up a example. I was helping my son with his piano practice earlier today, and he kept making the same mistake. And I was wondering, why is he making the same mistake? And so, what I did was we broke each measure down, and I had him say each note, and he's learning. He's young, and he's learning the different fingerings. His instructor is wanting him to learn to follow the different numbers, the fingerings on the sheet of music. And my son, he just wants to memorize the music and just get it over with his practice. That's problem number one. And maybe it's not a problem. See, there's my awareness. It's not a problem. Is he hears the music. The music sounds right, so it must be right. And that's his perception. But what the teacher is trying to do, she's trying to help him learn a little bit more of the keyboard. He doesn't see that. So anyway, as he was practicing, and he kept hitting this wrong note, so I paid attention to his fingering. And lo and behold, what I saw was he was supposed to be touching one key with like his thumb. Instead, he was touching the key with his pointing finger. And I said, aha, look, every time you get to this piece of music, and I started to call it the meltdown point, he would touched the key, it was the wrong key, he would have a total, he's crying, and, it's like, okay, this is not helpful. We're not learning anything. So let's see what's going on, because our motto is we make a mistake. And so we learn from our mistakes. And that's what he was getting frustrated with. He was making a mistake and he couldn't correct it. So when I told him, I said, every time you get to this note, you have to prepare for the note and make sure your finger is prepared for that new note. And so when we narrow down, instead of paying attention to the whole sheet of music, we just paid attention to that one little spot. And so the goal of the practice wasn't necessarily to finish the whole piece of music perfectly. The whole goal was to play that one section with the proper fingering. And so, that was a lesson learned. When we're learning about ourselves, and if our perceptions are so narrow, we keep making the same, we can't even see our mistakes. We can't even see our perception. And when someone else is pointing to, oh, you're hitting the wrong note with the wrong finger, sometimes that's not really easy to accept, because we want to figure things out by ourselves. But when he finally realized, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong, then he was able to successfully play that one section, and we call that a success. And so, how many other times do we just kind of narrow in on one thing that we're repeating, and we can't see, a more broader perception is what I'm trying to say. Another example is when we're talking about perception. When we're talking about perception and being in our narrow mindset, if I can say, instead of a growth mindset, we're kind of like fixed in our own fixed mindset. Another scenario about personal me, because I like to share and some of the things that I use transition awareness breathing, and it's just not breathing. It's about mindfulness, and it's about awareness, and it's about, okay, I recognize mistakes, my mistakes, and how can I fix it? So a friend of mine asked, we were in a conversation, and a friend of mine asked, so Eartha, how's your stress level, between 1 and 10? And I don't know I know where my mind was. My mind was, I had an appointment meeting that week, and the meeting I felt was going to be a little bit stressful. And so when my friend asked, where was my stress level between 1 and 10, I thought she was talking about my schedule. And I thought, well, we'll see, between 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 o'clock in the afternoon, my stress level is not that bad. And I got the weirdest look, and she was saying, no, not your schedule, your stress level and I was like, oh yeah. And I said, I am so, I think it's about a 6, and I'm not happy with that. Why is my stress level a 6? It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be a 6, And so I talked and I reflected, and later on that evening, I really had to say, this meeting, it shouldn't be a 6. I had to be aware of myself, and I said some prayers, because that's me, and and I had to really get a hold of that, and realizing that next time when I have a very important meeting, I'm aware of, let's see, okay, where is my stress level? How, what am I doing to prevent my stress level from getting that high? And so I was really appreciating my friend asking me that question last week, because I could tell you, my mind was on a schedule. My mind was in this narrow view of how, I was going to deal with this meeting. And it really sometimes, just personally, I'm not really thinking about meditation or awareness or breathing. Sometimes when I'm dealing with with different situations. And so I really appreciate my friend asking me that, because it brought me back to my core of oh man, this is a tap moment. So I share that with you so that maybe in your coming weeks that you can be aware of where you're at with your perception. We are not living in a vacuum. We do live in a culture of many different people, different cultures, different everything. And sometimes, if we see something, before we start passing a judgment, sometimes, we don't know how it is to live in that person's shoes. We're living in our own shoes from our own personal experiences and from our family's experiences, and to maybe want to ask or wonder or criticize, how come someone is not doing X, Y, Z? You don't know where that person has been or their experiences. Someone would ask me, how could you let your stress level be at a 6 when you're teaching transition awareness breathing? Well, we're all learning, and that is the beauty of growing in our perceptions, is that we accept, okay, see, this is another place where I can grow, and not to feel like, you beat yourself up emotionally or use a lot of negative words. No, we turn it into positive words. This is another place where I can grow. Next time this happens, I'm going to be aware. And so it's just like with my son on the piano. Now he's aware. And so broadening our perception is helping us grow mentally, and it helps us become more compassionate. It helps us to be kind. It helps us to see things more positively. With my students, is before we end our class, each person has to contribute 2 positive words. And, although they may say some of the same words, it's just great to end our class on positive. And so with that, I would like to thank you for joining me today in Transition Awareness Breathing Podcast. And I hope that you have a great week. See you next time.
Be sure and pick up a copy of Eartha's new book, Tab Mindfulness, Awareness and Coloring Activities in a Pandemic World. It's not just an ordinary coloring book. It features 23 illustrations to stimulate thought, relaxation, and creativity for anyone between the ages of 4 and 94. Increase your positive self-talk energy. Unlock new creative paths. Transform your time once or twice a week to create beautiful art while strengthening confidence, building positive self-talk, and sensitize self-awareness. Tab Mindfulness, Awareness and Coloring Activities in a Pandemic World. It's available now at Amazon.com.